Hi guys, and welcome to slightly less brain-hardy talk, okay, on yet another language you need to learn. But yeah, don't worry, it's just a joke. We'll be actually talking about developers and designers learning.
Talk closer.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry. So, we're actually going to be talking about developers and designers learning to interact together. Um, Better. Okay, so that's me. I'm a token creative for this conference. On daily basis, people pay me to put pictures and fonts on big billboards and various digital screens. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Felix. I'm generally a Ruby developer. I'm learning Elixir and Phoenix, so I'm very glad this is not a technical talk after that. And yeah, we're going to be moving on to basically how developers and designers should interact better.
We're going to be talking about principles, and sorry, we're going to be talking about principles in our words, like design principles and programming principles. What we discovered that those principles in our worlds are very similar, and they pretty much interlock with each other. So one of the first ones that is on the list is don't make user think. That's in design. In programming, there is principles of least surprise. What does it mean for design? It's to produce something that's very intuitive, very easy to use and navigate for user, for an end user. Next one is don't squander user patience, which means prepare simple or very quick access for them to navigate through the apps. Next one is make effective use of text, which in design means that uh, with a text, the size of a text, you need to illustrate the importance of the message you're trying to get across to your users. And this, everyone knows that one, keep it simple, stupid. So that goes across all of them. Next one is a composition. So this one for designers is it's a huge element of hierarchy that influences accessibility. Sorry, English is not my first language, so sometimes I'm like. Um, Next one's going to be communicate with visible language, which means that using the right content to match your message. So let's say if you're designing for banks, you obviously are not going to be using a pink color and shouty fonts, or you're going to go for more subtle things. So this is how we, let's say, in design, approach this sort of problem. Um, Conventions are our friends. So this one, this is a classic example of everyone knows that floppy disk icon means save. So those are just like obvious things. And the last one is test early, test often. You both guys, well, you guys do that, we do that as well. So whatever we design, we need to make sure that it actually works, that it has valid outcome, that it's, I don't know, just putting buttons all over the place or text somewhere, it's not an issue.
So what we were actually going to do is we were going to do similarities and differences in the different paradigms that were used in software development and in design. And we ended up going through and pretty much finding one for one that they are at least very similar in concept. You are actually talking about very similar concepts when you're going through software development rules and design rules. So now that you've kind of seen the paradigms are very similar, you're talking from the same perspectives and points of view, and what you're aiming for is the same. What you need to do is actually start to see there is an argument between development and design. There's always some debate, some different priorities. So what you need to do is basically start to learn to respect the other person's point of view. We think that some of that argument came from what we used to be defined as doing. So as designers, this is according to Wikipedia, is
A person who plans the look or working, or working of something prior to it being made by preparing drawings or plans.
and the fantastically informative description of what a programmer is
So that explains a lot, right? We all know this is just amazing.
So we think this might be the root of where the debate actually came about. So what we are now, slightly more modern terms, software developers. A software developer is a person concerned with all facets of software development process. This includes researching, designing, implementing, and testing software. And web designers.
It's the different areas of web design include web graphic design, interface design, authoring, including standardized code and proprietary software, user experience design, and search engine optimization. So that shows that currently our roles are really intertwining, and this is going to lead probably at some point to merge of the jobs that we're doing currently. So we need to make sure that we communicate with each other.
So the communication is going to become more and more important as the roles become more and more similar, and we're working and interacting more and more. One of the sort of 3 principles that we came up with how to communicate well is pretty much the same as in any teams, but particularly between developers and designers, we think it works very, very well, is talking often, which is a constant dialogue. You need to actually interact frequently, you need to ask questions, you need to be feeding back and forth. Yeah. The second one, talking goals. So talking goals sounds really trite and not very useful as a phrase, but it's basically talking about what is your end result. You both are trying to achieve the same thing. You're both trying to achieve a good website, a good product, a good interaction for your users, etc. So focus on talking about that, not talking on the implementation details. No one needs to know, oh, but the button is 14 pixels. The designer might care, the programmer might care, but you don't really need to talk about that. You need to talk about what is the button doing. And the finest one is talk simply. We all have various different languages that we talk about. We have various different technical terms. We have all these different things. If you can't kind of take that away and change it, you don't want to be talking about it, really. So the reason why we actually came about with PolyConf is that this is another language you need to talk. You need to learn the other person's dialect, what their technical terms are for things, but you also need to start throwing away things. We talk in jargon, buzzwords, domain-specific languages, not very useful. What we need to do is actually find common language, simplified abstractions, and not yak-shaving about minor details when actually all you need to be doing is talking about the end goal. One of my favorite examples is it responsive? Developer responds, yeah, it's pretty fast. Oh, you mean you can resize it? Okay.
Yeah, designers in generally don't understand the word responsive. It's normally, it's not the elements or falling like one after another. They just genuinely resize. That's what they refer to responsive. That's why there's this whole, it's very fast.
So once you've established your common language, your ability to communicate with each other, the next step is to start understanding what motivates people. Why, I know. Oh, you've got that slide? Okay, sorry. Having 2 people is complicated.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about priorities. So we need to understand, what motivates other people. Someone might have totally different priorities, even though we are trying to achieve exactly the same goal. For example, I might want to create a very engaging and rich website, and someone else can just focus on the page speed, that's all. In the sense that these are both good for the user, it's fine, but they're completely different focuses. So we set up a task.
So we tried to pick a familiar example. So we thought, as a developer, what would be a user story of what you might do on a daily basis? So we're working with web servers. The task is to Google the server's name, click on the first result, which is quite a specific answer because A, it's a slightly contrived example, and B, it's also because that means they've optimized for SEO, it's very easy to get to, it's a real thing. You need to be able to actually pop up in search results. And the third step is to find the documentation of the web server. Tech-centric, the attitude of how we're going to do it from a developer's point of view entirely would be, it's data-driven, it's a minimum viable product, it's like very, very simple to implement, and it's mapping a system to an interface rather than the other way around. So I Googled for Apache. You don't necessarily have to see the detail of this. So I Googled the word Apache. We've got Native Americans, helicopters, but the Apache Software Foundation is the first result. Awesome. OK. Where's the web server? I don't. Oh, OK. I've spotted that there's a link saying projects. I'm going to click projects. Where's the web server? Oh, OK. HTTP. I know that's something to do with web servers. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to scroll down this list. And there in the list, there's Apache HTTP server. Excellent. So I'm on the, oh, no, that's the project website. There's the actual website. OK, so where's the documentation? OK, oh, down here on the left, down here on the left. There we go. We've got the documentation link. We're to the docs. Excellent.
Awesome user.
So a more user-centric view. It doesn't matter if you like the web server or you dislike the web server, but this one does it slightly better. The user-centric view is that it's intuitive, it's simple to get to what you need, and it's mapping the user story to the interface instead. So I Googled Node. And it's nice and optimized. You've got a definition. You've got the first link, very, very clearly, is click on me. Click on the website. And there is a button for the documentation. This is what we should focus on trying to achieve.
That leads us to open source and its interaction with design. Recently, there is a movement within open source to better engage with design community. However, there have been teething problems. There's a main problem, which is a communication platform. This is a huge barrier for entry for designers. So developers are reaching out to designers for help with their projects via these tools. So to just give you a background, not every designer understands GitHub, IRC. Not everyone goes to tech conferences or meetups. Stack Overflow is just scary. I use IRC because I was born in the 80s, but when I talk to, let's say, younger people, they just think it's something geeky, and they don't know, they don't even want to touch it, they don't know even how to get there. But we designers do exactly the same. We've got our own echo chambers, so we hang out when we work, like in stuff like Dropbox, Evernote, Zeppelin. We just shut ourselves in those like paid softwares. Then yeah, we talk on design conferences and meetups about the same things that we do. So it's very not evolving. And when we ask for stuff, we don't go to Stack Overflow. We ask in forums like Adobe or LinkedIn, which not always are the best choices. So what we're trying to encourage is to find like some sort of common ground and this is also like a huge like request for you guys. If you know any better tools, tweet it, shout it, join open source to encourage people to go out from GitHub, because this is scary. So the tools that, from my perspective, I think, and this is also a feedback from different people, that both groups can use to communicate and work better together is Reddit. It's kind of a forum that both of us use. Going to each other conferences, like I'm crushing your conference right now. Organize meetups in through the companies that you work in. There's definitely a designer somewhere, so like going out for beers and then actually talking. They do have designer friends, definitely. Slack, Hangout, Skype, those are the major, I would say, communication tools used currently. Obviously Twitter, there's tons of people tweeting about jobs. And to actually establish workflow, once you've got a designer and you want to work on some sort of app or, I don't know, website, the best way, in my opinion, is Trello. So it gives you an access to full version control, to leave comments and updates, and there's some sort of documentation of how projects actually work. Because I don't think GitHub currently there is some work going towards that, but it's still very early stages as far as I know. So from this,
so the final kind of conclusions is that we are fearing the coming singularity, where we all have to actually know how to make it look pretty as well as make it know how to work, or vice versa. Suddenly, someone who's actually been building sites for user experience suddenly has to understand the database layer. It does look like our jobs are converging at least, but I would say it's more of an overlap. at the moment, designers can immediately offer stuff for developers.
And those are icons, layouts, user interface, experience, branding, logos, fonts, colors, T-shirts, leaflet, posters, all sorts of POS, and obviously websites.
So that's the focus from what design can give immediately, and developers can immediately give stuff to design in the form of tools, scripts, products, blah, blah, blah. You can read the list. And at the end, the same one, websites.
Not like designers nomads as well.
We end up...
Yeah, we end up as a unicorn, so we have to divine together. That leaves us with simple conclusion. We'll all have to learn each other's skills because our jobs are merging, or at least understand each other's jobs. In general, unicorns for the win. But, yeah.
So there are a few things, though, that we're already starting to actually do together. This is where the convergence, the overlap, where we're having to learn each other's languages kind of comes down to, is we're starting to communicate through web design, so the crufty markup languages, frameworks. We're starting to understand that we need to talk about the end user goals, the interactions, how things are going to go back and forth, because it's all got elements of tech and design all kind of intertwining slowly. SEO and analytics is a funny one because the content of the web page plus the build of the web page is just as important in those two things. And in the end, we're basically building the main place that we're coming together is websites again.
Yes.
So.
That's all. We're a bit too fast. So we just run through that.
Speaking very quickly, that is the
We
end.
have more time for questions.
Oh, yeah, we've got time for questions, or we can catch up on the late talks.
Yeah.
So, any questions? Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.